The debate around the Agnipath military recruitment scheme is back in the headlines, this after the memoirs of former Army Chief General Naravane. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. The short service plan, the new plan by the Modi government to recruit soldiers, has always been a point of debate. It has not stopped lakhs and lakhs of young men lining up to be part of the Indian military service. But the yet to be published memoirs of former Army Chief General Naravane has reignited the debate around this scheme, which provides for only 25% of men to be retained after a 4-year service. The memoirs now reveal that the scheme came as a quote unquote surprise to the army and a bolt from the blue for the other two services, the Navy and the Air Force. Invariably, the issue has also become a political issue with the opposition targeting the government. As I said, despite the fierce debate around the efficacy and desirability of this scheme, the enthusiasm by applicants has not dimmed. In fact, in 2022, a record 34 lakh applicants applied for different vacancies in the three services. But after these memoirs, the debate continues. Is this the best way to move forward with the modern military? Or might it change something deeply and irrevocably in the ethos of the Forge? Let me introduce our very special panel today. We have all three services represented on this program as General Naravane's book reopens a debate that seemed to have been closed. Joining us on the program is General Raj Shukla. He's a military veteran, a former army commander. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, sir. Also joining us today is Commodore G.J. Singh. He's a Navy veteran and a defense expert. A pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Joining us today, representing the Air Force, is a military veteran, former Group Captain Dr. M.J. Augustine. Always a pleasure, sir. And finally, joining us on the program is another Army veteran and strategic affairs expert, General Rameshwar Yadav. Thank you very much, all of you. And by now, all of you would know what the memoirs argue on this particular issue. But for members of our audience who may not know, what we discover is that the three services were not consulted prior. The army was discussing what is described as a tour of duty program, and suddenly it became the Agnipath program. For the Air Force and the Navy, General Naravane says that it was a bolt from the blue. There were also other arguments that took place. The army wanted 75% of soldiers to be retained. Eventually, the scheme retains only 25% of soldiers. Then there was a fight over the starting salary. The government wanted to place it at 20,000 per month. The army eventually was able to persuade the government to start the starting salary at 30,000 and so on. And we'll get to some of the details as we go along in this conversation. General Shukla, after the former army chief's revelations, do you change your mind at all? I remember when the scheme was announced, you were on our program. You were a votary of the scheme. You were a defender of the scheme. But today, for the armed janta looking at this, they're going to probably think that the Forge was not taken on board. The service chiefs were not consulted. That's not a good sign. What do you say, General?
So, Barkha, I would request you that just give me 3 to 4 minutes. I want to make some larger points before we get, seeped into the deeper Agnipath debate. One is that I would like to note that, these things have been happening in the government. They always keep happening. It is General Naravane who has chosen to take these debates to the public square through through his planned book. As you said, I had been.
And you don't agree with that? I don't mean to interrupt you, but you don't agree with him taking it to the public?
I agree with it. But once you take it to the public square, then, there will be all kinds of issues. There will be pros and cons and this view and that view. But the decision is his. This is a very personal choice. He has the democratic right to do it. But, there will be consequences of this, good or bad. That's the only point I wanted to make. The second point is, as you rightly observed, I have been a consistent supporter of the Agnipath scheme. And right from the time that General Naravane himself was a passionate advocate and an enthusiastic supporter of the scheme, through its many iterations, at least in the army, till what he now describes as a bolt from the blue. So that is the point I would like to make, that the army at least was consistently engaged with the government. There were various iterations, there were differences, but this bolt from the blue, description may not be entirely accurate. I have defended the scheme on your show. I have outlined my defense for the Agnipath scheme in a few articles. In my way, it is a good way to optimize and calibrate, three dimensions: the recruitment dimension, the training dimension, and the exit dimension. We profit in all three. It is going to improve combat delivery. It is going to lead to talent maximization as against just a job opportunity. The army is looking for structural corrections like the theater commands. We need concurrent cultural transitions. We need new talent pipelines. This is going to open up all that. So in my view, it was an extremely forward-looking scheme. Of course, now the proof of the pudding will lie in its execution. As it is currently playing out, at least in the army, I'm in touch with a lot of people in training establishments and field formation. And let me tell you, the reports are pretty favorable. The service chiefs seem to be happy with it. It is also not a scheme that is scripted in stone. There have been many changes and they will continue to happen. So it will be subjected to constant evaluations and corrections. There may be differences, and I'm on this show, I've seen people who differed with me. That will happen. All viewpoints need to be taken, and it is because of these viewpoints that the scheme has matured. But the second point I would like to lay for your consideration and the larger viewers is, that this is also a symbol of the larger struggle between status quoism and change. And this is the point. Often what is happening today is that status quoism is masquerading as high principle, that we don't want to change. These are the reasons we should not change, and that becomes high principle. This, in my view, is not wise. And look at theater commands, look at Agnipath, look at the way they are embracing technologies, new talent pipelines. We are rather slow in all this. National security is changing in very fast and dynamic ways. So I would say that, these kind of debates in that sense are counterproductive. They hamper organizational evolution.
Yeah.
Let me also make, currently today, is Agnipath the only challenge facing India? In the national security dimension, what is our response to missilery, the strategic support force, the great transformations that are happening in space and nuclear? The Chief of Army Staff is an august office. It is elevated and sacred. He is a salient actor in the national security scheme in space. He has to drive change through multiple dimensions.
Can I ask you?
Some will not succeed. 1 minute. Can I just make one last point here? And therefore, I look forward to his book. I would hope that the book, is an inspirational tale of evolution. It talks about these larger changes in national security, what were his ideas to change the army, also to the larger national security space. Those are the debates that should consume us. Agnipath is just one of them. If we drown all this, and see, let me give you one example. If you change, the fruits will come. Look at the Foreign Service. The way they have, rehashed their entire outlook in the foreign policy dimension. And now recently they have got some 600 additional vacancies. I think Mr. Jaishankar steered that. So we must not get trapped in just, it is not a one-horse race.
Okay. I need to open this up for the others, but I briefly want to ask you something. Though you said it was General Naravane's democratic right to say what he wants to in print, I take it that you would rather that he not have made these points in public.
No, I don't know why you're insisting on that.
Because you've said that this is a needless debate. It's an unproductive debate.
I did not say needless. I say it is one in the larger issues. Other issues. Or let me put it to you, Barkha. The enthusiasm with which you are talking about Agnipath, shouldn't the other issues not concern you? The lag with China, missilery, space, are these things not to be debated in the national security? But the only time, and in a lighter vein, that you really sound energetic is when it comes to Agnipath. Where are your shows on the other debates?
How can you possibly say that with a straight face? Sir, you've been on my show so many strategic
Yes, but not on these issues, Barkha. The China lag. The American military is conceding that it cannot stand up to China. Its deterrence is eroding. Why don't those issues not consume the national security mind space?
Yeah,
Agnipath is one of it.
yeah.
Yes, that's my whole point.
Okay, no, but I mean,
I'm sure. I'm sure his memoirs, Barkha, just one moment. This book is not yet out. It is not unifocally focused.
yeah, yeah.
Agnipath would be one
There are
chapter. There are
references to
multiple issues, and
there are
therefore I
ref,
look forward to the book. I look
I
forward to the book.
I
But I
just want
want
to
to read that other stuff also. What were his
I,
views on
I,
this?
I, I just want to say with utmost respect and affection that I have a generally energized personality. I am energized on everything I do. So it's not that I have some special enthusiasm for this subject. I want to be energetic and passionate about everything I do, but yet not take away from the gravitas. And you've made
Yes,
some
certainly.
and you made some very important points. And let's open it up. General Yadav, do you share General Shukla's argument that this is forward thinking? It breaks the status quo. It is almost not exactly a non issue, but a marginal issue when we talk about the national security sort of paradigm and the challenges, the sort of new challenges in a fast, rapidly changing, technologically driven sort of ecosystem that we're in? Or do you say that no, the book has made some revelations that will concern all three chiefs, all three services? Which side of the debate are you on, General Yadav?
You say we have to analyze this book and, in fact, the concept of Agniveer in a manner. What are the objectives? Objectives are twofold. Firstly, we would like to have armed forces younger, fitter, and tech savvy. That is on one side. All right. Second thing is the physical savings so that we get more money for the modernization. Both objectives are very fine, but we have to correlate these objectives with Indian security environment. Now, if we look at it, we have got two active borders, one side Pakistan, one side China. And as on date, China is sitting in eastern Ladakh. They are trying to change LAC into LOC so that that becomes a de facto border, and we forget about rest of Excitin. That is one point. Second thing, they're trying to nibble and do salami slices. Now, that is the kind of environment, and as far as Pakistan is concerned, their each and every activity is focused on destabilizing India. So, in this kind of environment, making a major change in manpower planning is something we have to look into. I'm not saying this is not a good scheme. My input from the units that I have interacted with, they were quite happy with the training of the Agniveers. But the problem will come up after 3 years onwards when 75% of them are going to move out, leaving only 25%. Now, correlated with the COVID period, 2 years, approximately Army recruits around 60,000 recruits every year. So, 2 years we have denied ourselves this kind of a manpower. As a result, each and every unit is shot by almost a company minus. So, in a combat unit, you will find each and every person is important because he is carrying a weapon or he has got some tactical kind of a role. So, to do that with a lesser manpower, it becomes very difficult. So, it is for the commanding officers to see to it to exploit available to them. That is one point. So therefore, after 3 or 4 years, we have to see how this scheme comes about. And the way General Naravane has said, initially they had projected 75% to be retained and 25% to be moved out. In my personal view, probably that would have been a better format in the current security scenario that we have. And thereafter, once this complete concept is validated for the Agniveers who have joined the units and all those who have gone out in the civil street, and
Yeah.
thereafter we can gradually modify it, reduce the number, and then take on so that our one leg is always on the ground, and at no stage our op preparedness is impacted in any manner. Even this
Okay.
scheme has got its own merits. I do not deny that. But probably we may have to have a relook onto this entire scheme.
Okay, very briefly, because I need to go to the other services. I'm going to be accused of being partial to the army otherwise. But General Shukla, very briefly, the last point that General Yadav made, that the former chief's book says that the services were keen on a 75% retention. Eventually, the scheme retains 25%. General Yadav makes the argument that perhaps you could have started at 75% and gradually brought this down. If you just want a quick comment on that, and then I'll go to the other two guests.
See, all these, 75, 25, pay 30, 25,000, they can't be settled on TV debates. But I'm extremely confident that you leave General Yadav with me in a room, and in 3 hours, we'll come to a consensus. Now, that's the larger point I make. Every time you run to the government that you are not agreed on anything, how do you lower your status, your negotiating power with the government? When will the services get their act together? And there are going to be larger challenges. We'll repeat the same thing in theatre commands. We'll repeat it in everything. This just has to go. This is the point I'm making. And therefore, I'm saying that, and half of this, I'm not saying that they are dishonest drivers, but they stem from status quoism. Of course, when you change, there'll be some pluses and there'll be minuses.
General Yadav, are you a status quoist?
We need to develop the sagacity
No,
to come
I'm not.
to these people.
I'm not status quo. I'm an analyst. Now look at it.
I'm just being naughty. I'm just being naughty. Yeah.
I'll just convey one point. Look, our security problems are in mountainous area. And in mountainous area, you have to hold the post. That is one. And incidentally, in mountainous area, we do not have offensive content. We have offensive content in plains and deserts where it is a settled border. So therefore, the operations in mountains against China as well as Pakistan is going to be infantry oriented, and which is manpower intensive. You see, technology can gradually reduce because technology is a big reckoner and it is a battle winning factor. And at the same time, the man behind the gun is also the one, and today all the weapon systems are so sophisticated. They require the right kind of manpower. And I'm not a status quo. I'm for the reduction.
No.
I
was
present teeth to tail ratio. I'm for that. But do it gradually.
Okay.
Can I just make, but
I really have to go to the others. Sir,
15 seconds. 15 seconds. 15 seconds. I want to show my agreement with General Yadav. Just 15
okay.
And then I will yield it to the Air Force and Navy.
All right. Okay.
You see, this argument of manpower versus technology, very respectfully, sir, is a little erroneous. Does the Indian Army not need LEO capability on the northern borders? It will give you persistent surveillance. The infantry battalion needs it. Does the northern theater not need to get AI enabled? So this argument, manpower versus technology, very respectfully, is not.
No, it is General Shukla, it is not for manpower and technology. I'm saying empower the forces deployed, all arms and services in mountains through technology.
Yes,
technology is a battle winning factor. We are talking about here about the recruitment model that we are talking about. Arm for reduction, teeth to tail ratio is not correct in our army as on date. It needs to be petered out. We have to have a balance. I'm for reduction, but my point is reduces gradually.
You're for a slower
reduces gradually, not through a surgical operation.
So Barkha, compliments to you. Consensus in 10 minutes. Just watch.
See, this is why you have to be enthusiastic about everything that one does in life. Let me bring in former Group Captain Augustine now. Sir, go ahead. You've heard the two generals. Some areas of disagreement, an area of consensus. The disagreement only seems to be at the pace of change. Now, again, I want to underline with same enthusiasm, General Shukla, that 34 lakh applicants actually applied for the Agnipath scheme across services in 2022. More than 17 lakhs were for vacancies in the army. And you can see those numbers on your screen, but there was no less enthusiasm for the Air Force and the Navy. The Air Force received 7.5 lakh applicants for 3,000 vacancies and so on, 10 lakh applicants for the Navy. So clearly, while the rest of the, the sort of geostrategic environment debated this, on the ground, applicants were coming in droves. But General Naravane's book possibly raises three concerns. Were the service chiefs given the autonomy to decide? He suggests perhaps not. There was debate, but eventually for Navy and Air Force, it was a bolt from the blue. Two, there was some quibble over the starting salary. The services got their way. Three, he would have wanted more men to be retained, 75% to be precise, at least initially. Go ahead.
All right, now, Barkha, a couple of points. In fact, six to be precise. Firstly, I tend to agree with General Naravane that it must have come as a bolt from the blue, both for Air Force and the Navy, and both generals would agree with me. More often than not, in many larger cases, it is bolt from the blue for both the other services, because the leading service being Army, sometimes the Air Chief and the Navy Chief is sort of in the pecking order, the last to know what is going on. But be that as it may, what is important for us to discuss here is two things. First, how did it come about? What was the necessity for this change? The necessity was for this change. I'm most certain it was driven by a prime minister for two reasons. First, the amount of money we were spending on pensions alone was huge, and over a period of time, it needs to be cut. Otherwise, what will happen is, as the life expectancy goes up, and well-trained professionals who go out of armed forces tend to live longer, and they tend to get pension as long as they live, and it just continues to his wife, and so on and so forth. So that could be reduced. And in the the services, that is not civil services, I'm saying the civilians in the armed forces, the pension was done away with. Now, like, you put money from your pocket, and that is what you take as pension once you retire. It's a fair way of tackling this problem of defense expenditure, mounting defense expenditure on pension. That is one. Point number two is jobs. We promised a lot of jobs, and this is the best way of giving the jobs. The arithmetic of Agnipath, I've written an article on it, in fact. For the Air Force, it is not like Navy and the Army. Air Force, the fighting arm, the fighter pilots and the pilots, basically. The men of the Air Force, most of them, 90% plus or maybe more, do not go and see the enemy. They are not men with guns, they are men with tools. So those are the people who keep the aeroplanes up in the air, and also fight if there need be, but most of the air bases are well protected. So the point I'm trying to make is, um, because being exposed to higher and a better technology, most of the airmen who join, they want to leave after 15 years, because now they will get the advantage of having pension, and retention in Air Force is the major challenge. And people who get retained, or people who want to get retained, are those who cannot find something outside. That is the problem. Whereas when you now have the option of retaining the good ones from the ones who will apply to be retained, then you will have at the senior level who are a little better, for want of a better word, I'm using this word better, little
Yeah.
better than currently who are getting retained. So that is the essence of the difference between Army, Navy. Even the
So, so,
Navy
so,
men
so,
fight the
so
battle,
can
but
I
Air
ask you
Force men
something?
do not.
Can I ask you something? What I'm hearing from you is, indeed it would have been a bolt from the blue, but all change is bolt from the blue. In the pecking order or the way the military is structured, the Navy and the Air Force would get to know after the Army. But by definition, it being bolt from the blue doesn't bother you. Am I hearing you right?
Absolutely, and probably the Agnipath is the best suited scheme. I don't know about Navy, but certainly for Air Force, because now Air Force will get to retain a better personnel than it is getting to retain now, because most of them want to leave and go because they're exposed to better working environment, technology, etc. They are sought after people when they go out in the civil street.
Okay, let me bring in the Navy perspective. Commodore, go ahead. Commodore Singh. Can we unmute, sir, please? Yeah,
Thank
go ahead,
you
sir.
for taking me on your show. I would like to differentiate differently myself from the Army and Air Force, because in the Navy, when we fight, uh, whether it's a carrier or a battleship or a cruiser or a frigate, when the ship goes down, whether it's a admiral or a commodore or a captain or a lowest rank like seaman, everyone goes down. So our mindset is very different. We fight the war very differently. And I will not go into any mathematics here, any mental math, but I would like to make it very clear that the transaction which is done at the border for the security of our country or safety or defense of a country is the transaction of blood and life. It is not done by any financial transaction. Now, accordingly, the troops or the foot soldiers are indoctrinated and prepared or motivated differently than the ones who are just taken in for few years and their focus is basically to serve just for 4 years and thereafter have a lump sum of 12 lakhs. The motivation is very different here. It is not of dedication, loyalty, and devotion to your country or to the defense of and security or pride of this country. So therefore, right from the beginning, I have been differing along with many other very senior officers. We did not agree with this policy because, you see, in an actual scenario out at war, when the things really happen on ground, if you have the regular troops and the Agniveers fighting alongside, it is very common that in the minds of the Agniveers will be that, look, let's save our lives because after 5 years we are going to go out and therefore have our whatever lump sum we are going to have. Whereas the regulars can say that these people are come to serve just for 4 years and thereafter they're getting 12
So you
lakhs.
believe?
Let them fight. So there can be a conflict of motivation. So this is a very dangerous trend because the ethos and grand principles on which the armies are based do not change like fashion. They are different. Any number of modern, equipment, and it's okay.
But sir, just to argue it, I hear you that this is
Yeah.
not transaction of money; it's of blood and tears.
Blood
and
and
I'm,
life.
and I must underline that at this moment, we are all watching anxiously as our former Navy veterans are in custody in Qatar, and I must just underline our hope and prayers that they are able to be brought back safely. But briefly, because I saw a group captain with his hand up. Someone might argue that अभी भी तो इससे पहले भी तो short service commission थे. There was short service commission officers even earlier, and so if you're talking about two kinds of fighting forces, didn't that exist even earlier? What would you say to that?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You see, the officer class was very different. Out here, the Indian Army Jawans or the troops consist of from the people from rural India. They are not coming from urban areas. They are coming from basically rural, where their mindset is tied down to a pension, which is a regular pension coming to their families in case in the event of their laying down lives. They have something to fall back on because it's the government's duty, it's a nation's duty to look after their families after. That is why the pension was introduced, or this particular provision is there in the services. Secondly, our people in the villages have got that thing, pride of being a subedar, or being a major, or being a captain in the army, or being a colonel. Their whole dynamics are very different when they come to the services.
I hear you. Let me
So I'm trying to break down the basics on which we fight. Our troops fight. They are coming here not to fight the enemies. They're coming for their rosy roti, and it is fulfillment of a election manifesto that will create it.
Okay, group captain.
I mean,
before I
very
return to the
different.
generals,
The comparison is very different. These people
Commodore,
have to
I hear
understand.
you. Commodore, I hear you. I want you.
Yeah.
I want Dr. Augustine to come in. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
All right, Barkha, I've been saying this for a while. I'll say it again. Take a corporate company, for example. Say it's going to recruit 100 people, okay, and it is going to pay you 1 crore a month. But only caveat they have is on 31st of December, it will randomly pick somebody, one person from your batch, 100 of you, and shoot you in the head. Will you join such a job? 4 of us have joined such a job. We served in that job and we survived the Russian roulette. I have picked up my own Postmates in plastic bags. I'm sure when all the generals sitting out here have seen such thing in their lives. So I tend to differ with what Commodore was saying. Children today, you've been in the.
I want to put it differently. Barkha, just give me a minute. You see, when you talk in a studio, when you talk in a in the office or in any academically, you can do a lot of mental maths. You can do a lot of things. You can say everything appears to be okay. It is all mental assent. You are agreeing to it, but out at wars, you don't fight with your mind. You fight with your emotion. Your basics, your inner man is different. There, your guts come in. Your emotions come in. Your motivation, what you have right, what you are really inside comes out.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. Our troops,
I-
when you fight a war, are very different. So
I think we
mentally,
agree.
mental math and all that is
I
okay.
think we all agree with you, sir, on the josh and the
Yeah.
passion that drives our soldiers at the front line.
Yes.
I let Group Captain finish his point. Vikram Batra's iconic words that I was privileged enough to capture. Ye dil mange more. That is the passion, and I think the critics of the Agniveer scheme have argued that it doesn't sufficiently recognize or understand that passion. The debate was closed. The general's book has reopened it. So here we are. Quickly finish your point, and then I want to go back to our two generals.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. I'll finish the point, Varsha. Barkha. See, our young, I've interacted with many Agniveers recently. I had the opportunity of interacting with them. None of them, not even one Barkha, are driven by either pay, money, or what they will get down the road 4 years. The passion they're working with, and some of them are looking forward to go out and work in the city streets. The passion they are working with is ability to wear the uniform, the opportunity to wear the uniform. B, they will be called veterans. So it's a different passion altogether. The current generation, the generation sitting out here, probably may not be able to understand this. Point number two, the aspect of the book. The book could be like I agree with the General very completely. It could be bringing out something totally different. But what has come out is, I think, cherry picked those words, which is going to probably make the book viable. So that is one aspect we need to consider.
Well, unfortunately, till we all have the full book, we don't know. We're going by the excerpts. The excerpts also talk about a free hand given after the China Galwan situation. We have all of that also that is referenced.
And
but
publishers want to, probably.
Barkha, just a last line. Only one line, I would say. One line.
Okay.
See, when the general was in army, when he was serving soldier, he was being politically correct with the government. Now he's retired. He need not to be politically correct, so he has come out with the truth of his heart.
But Agniveer is good, sir.
You are saying it is good. I'm saying he was being politically correct at that time. Now he is not politically correct.
Okay, let me take that to the two generals who are also today free to speak openly and don't have to be politically correct. General Shukla, one of the things that we know basis the excerpts of the book is that the initial discussion seemed to be on what the army called a tour of duty program. So there was always ongoing discussion about a kind of short service recruitment plan. What was not known was that it would replace entirely the existing system of recruitment, point A. Point two, to General Yadav's point, imagine the same change, but not that you are retaining only 25% men. That has been something that has, shaken a lot of people who may have otherwise supported this scheme. And the third point, you made this point about, how you and General Yadav were able to reach an agreement. We don't know for sure, but there's a suggestion here that the three chiefs did not have the last word on this, that it was left to General Rawat, that there is a reference to that. So who actually took this decision eventually, we don't know. Go ahead, General Shukla.
See, let me make one point, which a very important point with the Commodore G.J. Singh raised. The critical issue is there any dilution of combat ethos? I don't see it. Very recently, I was there at the Artillery Center. It seemed to me, I shouldn't be saying it, but the Agnipath has generated more enthusiasm. Those chaps seem to be better. There is simply no dilution in the combat ethos. And when there is no dilution in the combat ethos, I'm very sure that the current commanders will ensure that they get their due. I mean, these are not issues which every day come out, but they will make sure that they get their due. The second point, is the issue of service chiefs. See, I just don't see this. The entire army was talking about Agniveer. I knew it. We did studies. We did studies in the recruitment domain, in the training domain, and the exit domain. We went through all this. As Army Commander Artrak, we examined the whole training system, and an independent study came to the conclusion that our training years, the time frame was bloated. We needed to curb it, and the savings were invested in technologies. In many areas, it was a carefully thought through scheme. So as to why it should come as a bolt from the blue to the other two services, I'm sure it was discussed in the Chiefs of Staff Committee and all. I'm not too sure, but we will take General Naravane's word for that. The larger issue is a very important issue. I mean, what is the role of service chiefs? And see, that's why I say it's a very sacred appointment. It cannot be that in service I be politically correct and suddenly after retirement I get the freedom to speak. If at any time I am served a situation or a term which is going to subtract from combat delivery of the armed forces, they are legitimate tools with you. If you disagree, you resign. I mean, surely service chiefs are not appointed to write their memoirs. We have to deliver while we are in service. National security is a very important issue. This cannot be the case. And just one last point I would like to make, and this is for larger consideration of veterans who are older than me, experienced, and for the wider world. See, do the armed forces need to re-establish their relationship with the political class? For very long, out of a little hubris, we thought that the politician was ill-informed, we were better. It is no longer true. I've seen it in the last 4 or 5 years. The politician is pushing you to change. You go back to the speech of the Prime Minister 2014-15 to the combined commanders. I mean, it's a visionary document. From there, he has constantly pleaded with us, do this, do that. We must honestly ask, what have we done? Where have we been able to forge consensus? ये आज दबी जबान में लोग पूछ रहे हैं, कल खुल के पूछेंगे. So this bit, constant complaining and whining will not do us any good. We have to see in the larger agendas where have we performed. And in that, we must look at our relationship with the political class. Constantly being in conflict does not do us any good.
Okay, I want to pick up this last point that you made. You picked it up from Commodore Singh and take it to General Yadav. That if the chief, or any of the three chiefs indeed, felt that this was going to dilute combat ethos, which is the single most important decision that they had to make or evaluation that they had to make, then they needed to put their disagreement reservations on record then, not later. You can't be politically correct as the military chief of India. I think I think that's the argument that General Shukla made.
If it subtracts, there will be day-to-day differences, but if it subtracts on an issue which is very dear to you and which matters to combat delivery, then there are other options in democracy.
Yes. That if you disagree so much, so substantively, that you actually think that the security of the service that you're commanding is going to be compromised, the security of your country is going to be compromised, then you speak up or you resign. If you keep quiet, then you don't speak later in a book. Again, we have not read the whole book.
You speak later. You have that freedom also, but I differ with that. That's all.
Okay, General Yadav.
Firstly, since we have not read the book, so we really can't comment on it. That is one point. Second is, chief is a senior most officer and he's an institution. What decision he is taking is his prerogative, and I'm sure he takes the decision in national interest. That is one point. But the larger issue, what I want to project through your show is, what is our aim? What our political leadership has set for us for 2047? We would like to be fully developed country. Now, to do that, the national security is one of the most important aspects. For that, we need a credible military deterrence that we have to build up. It can be built up through technology, for which we need more money since we are importing major part of our equipment from abroad. And at the same time, we need to have manpower which is technologically very savvy, who can take on to this weapon and equipment easily. So whichever be the system, systems will come and go. But what we have to see are of preparedness at every time in Indian context has got to be ensured by the government and by a service chiefs and everybody down the rank from the chief to down the Jawan. This is what our central theme should be, and this is what our objective is. And I'm sure our present military hierarchy is working towards that. Agniveer is not bad. It is a scheme in working, and we would like to see its result after 3 to 4 years. And in case any shortcomings is there, I'm sure entire political hierarchy and military hierarchy will take a relook and modify the things accordingly.
Okay, just time for last comments now. Commodore, I'll come to you. Since you are, in a way, more than General Yadav, you have been a consistent, as you said, not critic, but a skeptic. Maybe the word is to say skeptic of this scheme. Do you want to come in? By the way, as we speak, of course, there is reports coming in of an army truck ambushed by terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch district. So, every day we are dealing with security challenges. Go ahead, Commodore.
You see, I would say that the regular troops have got a better motivation, better indoctrination, better training for battlecraft in a war. You need different people. Now we have Agniveers. Their first of all training is very short, and their motivation, they're looking out at 12 lakhs, which are going to get after 4 years. Thereafter, probably they have their plans to go in for business or start their own business or do something else. Whereas a regular guy, a regular troop who comes into the service, get the full training and is motivated, as I was telling earlier, his mindset is different. He is there out to defend the country. He is out there with the loyalty. His passion is different. We have examples in our, heroes who are at the age of 44, 45, have won the Veer Chakras and Paramveer Chakras and whatnot. So therefore, to say that only the people who are of the age less than 25 will be able to fight better, I don't buy that idea. I think the people who have put in 15, 16, 20 years service, they are equally good when it comes to war. In fact, they're more matured with the battle. They're more what you call battle hardened people. Because when it comes to, laying down your life, as I said, the transaction is different. It is not scientific or that knowledge or all that.
I think we all
going
agree
on
with
the
that.
other side of the river. It is laying down your life, and you are on the other side of the river. You are not here then. So it's different. That's what I want to
as a journalist whose entire life was shaped and formed by reporting a war that transformed me forever, I hear you. I agree with you. I think we all agree with you on the passion of our forge. General Shukla, briefly, then I will go to Dr. Augustine. Yeah, General Shukla.
See this point that Commodore is making about short service and all. So I'm a NDAI, regular guy, a very proud NDAI, but will I concede that the short service officers in my battalion were as good, or in my regiment? Of course they were. In combat, and also these distinctions really do not hold true right through. We have had short service, great guys. I can recall their names today, VP Singh and so on and so forth. So let us look at our experiment with other entries. When the TES started, the technical entry scheme, we were very skeptical about it. When I was the army commander, many of the TES officers were doing far better than NDA. And why? Because NDA has chosen not to relook at itself to reform. So an iconic institution like NDA, unless you continuously reform, there are other cadres, other entries pushing to do well. So therefore, I constantly say change. Please change.
Okay. Dr. Augustine?
Couldn't agree on what General Shukla said, and probably you took a little bit of wind out of my sail. Quickly, I'll come to a couple of quick points. Like I said, I'm sure you have an opinion and you have a data. Sometimes what happens is the data shapes your opinion if you are open to shaping your opinion with the data. And let me give the data. And I did that slide a while ago. While interacting with these Agniveer children, some of them were from very well-to-do family, Barkha, and they did not need these 14 lakhs like Commodore was saying. They did not need it. And offline, I talked to you. Remember that big industrialist I was talking about, and his son. He roams around in Bentley and whatnot. And he said, Gusty sir, if I had an option when I was young that I could serve my country for 4 years or 5 years in the Agnipath scheme, even as Jawan, I would today happily do it. So that is the kind of, pact, that is the kind of people, young people we have. And you saw it in Kargil, the ones who went up the hill, did they go for 14 lakhs? So that argument is completely, I do not subscribe to it, A. B, and most importantly, what General Shukla said, the polity gives us certain directions based on larger scheme of things, which is nation and other, compulsions in place, other requirements in place. Whereas in the armed forces, we have a very, I wouldn't say narrow, but very focused vision. So when polity gives us a certain direction, it is incumbent upon, especially when you are in the senior position like chiefs, etc., to be a little flexible, to understand that, assimilate that, and put it into practice, which we did, and we did it wonderfully. Over to you, Barkha.
Okay, I think let me give the last word to General Yadav. If anyone wants to come in briefly after that with any concluding thoughts, we'll do that. General Yadav, this book, again, I think everybody has made the point, none of us have read it, right? We have what's come out in the media. I did reach out.
It is not out, so how can we read it, Barkha? It's not out.
मैं वही बोल रही हूँ कि जो excerpts मीडिया में आए हैं वही पढ़े हैं जो what publishers have released. I did reach out to General Naravane and he said he'd like to wait a while before he speaks up. I think he doesn't want to wade into a politicized argument, and I can understand that. General Yadav, any last thoughts?
My last thought is, you see, it takes minimum 6 to 7 years to train a Jawan who actually starts contributing towards the battle craft. And in that, you see, it is not only the basic training that we are giving it to Agniveer. There are certain restrictions for them to get onto battalion support weapons or other weapons like that. You see, we are looking for a Jawan who's good individually in his weapon. That is number one. Secondly, he is tactically oriented in a tactical situation, how he has to react. And thirdly, he has to be part of a team, tactical team, from a section to a platoon to a company. That thing takes time. You have to do number of exercises, lot of training that goes in. And for that, I think 3 years actual service in the units not adequate. So we are not utilizing the potential of the Agniveers. They're doing very well. This is what my input is. They're on the move. They're, in fact, one of the commanding officers told me they're better than the earlier recruits. Reason is very simple, that they are competing with themselves and their counterparts every day. There is a pressure on them to perform, otherwise they will be out. But it is a good scheme, but it needs a little relook.
Okay, I have to close. General Shukla, I think what we're hearing is give them more time in the forge. Retain more for longer. I think is what both of the skeptics, as it were, are saying.
This is a very important.
Sorry.
Can I come in?
Yeah, sure.
Can I come in?
Sure.
See, this is a very important point. Now, see, what is the army getting to do? You are getting to retain 25% of the best. So you are not being of the best.
Absolutely.
So, and now this is the point. You see, aaj bhi, there is reservation 10% everywhere in all state governments, this, that. It is very cleverly twisted. It is twisted so that it is denied to infantry. They have twisted the rules so that, EME and the other get it. Civilians get it. Now, when we have this 75% option with a strong government who has said that in ministries, we must push and make sure that this 75, at least, or whatever it is, 60% gets done. Now, when you have a trained body in the army going to the civil street, guaranteed jobs, it's win-win for everyone. But it is not won today. It has to be pushed. Now, we must make use of the changed environment when you have political commitment to this. Now, the argument is, देखो पहले नहीं हुआ, पहले तो यार बड़ी चीजें नहीं हुई. But it can't be in the past.
Last line, one line.
अच्छा, आप बोलिए, then मैं जनरल शुक्ला, I'm sure we'll have a last line on that. तो आप बोलिए.
एक ही लाइन बोलता हूं मैं, ज्यादा नहीं बोलूंगा.
जी, जी.
You see, I want to refer to the old ancient wisdom. A horse and chariots were the symbols of military might. But the wisdom says a horse is prepared for the battle, but the victory lies in the hands of God. So I think the victory lies, or the test lies, when we will actually go out at war. It will not be done here in the studios and in the academies.
Well, I would just like to say that in many situations, we are every day at war. It's not called war, but it is de facto war. We have a massive build-up, eyeball to eyeball, sometimes in Eastern Ladakh. We have men fighting at the front line of Kashmir, as we speak, it is happening. And so while I would never wish war on any soldier, I think I just wanted to say that our men are already fighting that situation. But General Shukla, one very quick question to you. I believe, please, with all humility, that the test, Commodore says war. I think the test will also be when the first batch, the first 25% is retained and the other 75% is let out. What happens to them? That will also be a test. You may have to look and review this scheme at that point. Would you agree with that, General Shukla?
Barkha, it is being reviewed every month. Now, since you've asked me, I know how concerned the Army Chief is about its outcome. Very closely reviewed. Since it is being reviewed so intimately, I have full confidence that it will succeed. And the other issue is, I raised it right in the beginning in a light-hearted manner. What should worry us is the growing power asymmetry with China. Growing. Let's have a debate on that. That is what should occupy the national security mind space. And Mojo will do a wonderful service to the country if it can elevate the debate there. Great things are happening. Great challenges.
That I was just
and
going
that
to
is
say.
Where we must focus.
I had already planned to say in the end that we are going to definitely have all four of you back to talk about the issues you have flagged, General Shukla. And indeed, I think by the time General Naravane's book is actually available to all of us to read, I'm sure there'll be many other issues that we will need to talk about, including the challenge from China. And I promise, General Shukla, that I will be even more enthusiastic than I was today.
No, come on. I'm sorry.
No. I'm just taking the liberty of having known all of you a long time in a light-hearted vein entirely. Your feedback is always very well respected and heeded. Thank you very much to all of you, Generals Yadav and Shukla, to Commodore Singh and to Dr. Augustine. The debate, I was going to say continues, but the debate had actually paused, stopped, been postponed. General Naravane has reopened it for a while. We'll wait for the full book to come out. We'll wait to hear from General Naravane himself, who is silent in a way through this. We're only dependent on excerpts that have appeared in the print media. But thank you, gentlemen, for the moment, and hope to have all of you back on many other pressing issues related to national security and the future of India. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Mojo Story has always made a commitment to its viewers to go to where the story is. And as you can see here, we are at the epicenter of the Israel war on Gaza. We are right at the front line, about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military gets ready with its tanks and its gunners to begin its final frontal assault that will take troops into Gaza. As we said, we are not like other organizations. We believe in giving you all sides of the story objectively and as much as possible from the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing here, covering the biggest global story today from the epicenter of the war zone. So please, we need your support. Support us, become a Mojo member, subscribe to us, spread the word, and thank you for your support.